Thank you, Sipe. We're not going to take questions right now. What I do want to do is point you to this that's on your chair. So this is millennial stuff. That little block there, the bottom right-hand corner. So if you point your camera on your phone, a barcode. QR code, sorry. I thought the bar was open. QR, oh there, QR. Don't ask me what QR stands for, but the QR code. If you point your thing there, then something happens on your phone and you press it, and it takes you to WhatsApp. And then on WhatsApp, you can send us a question for the speakers. Okay, sorry, I'm on the wrong side of 50. And this is all new to me, technology. I think, Sipe, thank you very much. The questions are coming. As I said, we thought we'd have the speakers up front and the questions at the end, so there's a lot of time for Q&A. We're very excited to have join us this evening Mr. Dan Marokane. Dan is the CEO of Eskom for about 200 and something days. We've asked Dan just to come and talk to us. You know, it's nice that the lights have been on for so long, except if you're in the solar business. But how sustainable is it? One. And I think a lot of questions that we have from clients, besides the sustainability, is the turnaround. How does that contribute to the growth? And when we see the growth coming back into the country, you know, can Eskom still play its part? There's quite a lot happening. I think enough for me. I'm going to hand over to Dan. Dan, thank you very much. You all received the CVs with the invitation, so I'm not going to read Dan's CV out. But Dan, thank you very much for joining us.
There's too much lights there. Good afternoon, good evening. I thought I was looking at your slides, looking at what is contributing to this change in mood in the country. I kept looking. I thought, next slide, maybe you'll show it. Are you sure you finished the presentation? You can come back. Yeah. Good evening, and thank you very much, Craig and Kahiso, for inviting me. I thought you'll also mention that I'm a client of yours. I hope you're buying electricity from me as well. So. For a few times you invited me to this conference and I could never make it because something came up. I've had this misfortune of picking organizations that are in distress. And when you work in organizations that are in distress, you never know what tomorrow is bringing. So every time I've had to readjust my schedule, but this time Kahiso reached out 3 months ago and spoke to everyone in my office to have it hardwired in my diary. And the biggest and toughest thing I had to do this week from Monday was to defend tonight, to defend the slot in terms of my availability. And thanks for everything pulled together, and I'm here now. So let me address the issue that the team at GMI asked me to deal with, and hopefully you will develop your own sense of where we are as a business and where we are headed to, and you can make up your own minds in as far as what all of this means for the country going forward. Incidentally, we did our winter system update on the 28th or so of April. I do recall very clearly on the day we had 30 days of no load shedding. And it started quite a lot of speculations as to why we were doing that, because the elections were coming the following week, and immediately after the elections, we were going to go to stage 8, and so on. This coming Monday, we will do the state of the system, not for the winter update, but for the summer outlook. We'll do that on Monday. So you have an advantage of some info that otherwise the rest of the country will see on Monday. But I'm asking you to behave, right? You don't come out of here and tweet the slides and do this. You'll get me out of my job, and the load shedding will come back. This coming Saturday will be 150 days without load shedding. I looked at the forecasts that I carefully scrutinize every day. We're looking very good for many days to come. And that's what you'll see in detail on Monday. So let me start off with this slide that essentially gives you some key matrices of our performance. This is really looking at the period between 26th of March or so. As I said, on Saturday, it will be 150 days of no load shedding. The second key parameter that you need to remember, and we've quoted this quite extensively in the press, it's 10.2 billion rands of a reduction in diesel spend year on year. You'll recall that there were some comments made after the 30 days and the 40 days that we're spending diesel and consuming it at knots. We've put out, Craig, not only the solar energy and PV guys out of business, but the diesel suppliers are also hurting. You would have seen the headlines from Sasol yesterday. Part of their performance is attributed to the reduction in terms of diesel consumption from Eskom. So a lot of people are feeling some pain. It's unintended consequence. Our focus is single-minded, is on fixing the country. Then we'll fix the others thereafter. So where is this performance coming from? This performance is primarily coming from an improvement in terms of the reliability of our installed capacity. So at some point, Eskom's fleet was available to an extent of around 50% of the installed capacity. The maintenance work that we have done intensely from last December and carried through to the end of April or so has released a further 7 gigawatts of electricity or capacity, electricity generation capacity from our installed capacity. This 7 gigawatts, just to give you a sense, that's 7,000 megawatts. That's more than it takes to get up to stage 6 of load shedding. All of it not from new infrastructure, but from capacity that is already there. And that's what reliable maintenance plans and its execution really does for you. We've always argued the quickest way to end load shedding is to make your installed infrastructure work for you. And then you can start focusing on diversifying the mixture of your sources. At the beginning of July, April, we are sitting at some energy availability factor of late 50s. We've moved this now consistently to around 67%. When we look at this on a week by week basis, many a times in the last 6-7 weeks, we're hovering around 70%. Very, very notable shift, and this is really where the capacity is released from. Of course, the contribution of the renewable energy, especially wind and solar during the day, also adds to giving us some flexibility. And how we use that is that we use that available ullage to do more maintenance, and in the process, we're improving the reliability of our system. We've also focused on skills development within our business. Many of you would have read reports from the likes of VGBE report that said everything is broken in the business. There are no skills, there are no technical people. We've been very intentional with this. Employed more people, filled up vacancies, deliberately brought in new pipeline of learners so we can have the requisite staff complements as we proceed. All of this has been possible because of the National Treasury Debt Relief Intervention. That provided certainty with regards to funds so we can plan our maintenance better. We can do our long lead procurement timelessly. We can also hire more people and bring the resources that we need. So a healthy Eskom that has the ability to fund itself can actually improve its efficiencies, and all of that needs to translate to lower required tariffs, a subject I will not start today because it's already being started off in the public domain, and we'll engage with it quite extensively in the next 2 weeks. So our plant maintenance overall has increased by just over 10%. This is where the sustainability of the benefits that we see from performance perspective is coming from. How do we see it? This graph depicts the unplanned capacity losses, and in simple terms, these are breakdowns, the percentage of your capacity that is not available because of breakdowns. If you look at the winter period, when we did the winter outlook back in 2023, on average, on your left, you are really hovering between 16 and 18% of unavailable capacity. When we did the summer outlook earlier this year, you'll recall we were still coming out of load shedding windows of late Feb, March, and there you are beginning to see a downward trend from the 16s down to the 13s and 14s, and this was the summer outlook last December. That's why you experienced the kind of summer that you did with load shedding, and by the time we did the winter outlook in April, we were starting to see the impact of the maintenance that we did in December, January, beginning to draw in, with the availability, unplanned availability declining quite substantially. Those of you who recall, we said, when we did the winter outlook, we said, if we keep the unplanned losses below 14,000, we should have no load shedding. And that was a very important focal point for us, that we have higher reliability than we ever experienced. And we did that. The driver behind the performance you are seeing today is because we were able to keep the unplanned losses below 14,000. We averaged around 12.5, and on some good days, we have hit actually 9,000 megawatts in terms of unplanned losses, as opposed to the higher numbers on a year-on-year basis that were in the upper 15th and 16th. So the performance that you are seeing today is a direct outcome of deliberate interventions from a maintenance execution perspective, which maintenance encompasses strategy shifts where we're working closely with OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, especially for critical systems. That takes us out. A power station has got a number of systems. You have to know the ones that are quite critical. If one of them gets off and takes you out completely, we have gone back to focus on working with our original equipment manufacturers on all of those. When this generation recovery plan started, a number of stations that were offending or repeat offenders were identified, and we focused on dealing with those. As we get some shifts in the performance of those, the whole fleet performance really comes up. And I must tell you, included in the power stations that really perform well are the power stations that some people before us said they're old, they'll never be fixed, they're broken, and they must just be shut down. And Arnold Power Station is one of them. That station at some point had energy availability factor in excess of 80%. Maintenance. If you do the right things, you can get this sorted out. So that's where the performance is coming from. What is our focus going forward? As a business, we fully understand our role in society, in the South African society. Because we're owned by government, we have dual mandates in terms of shareholder expectation. The first one, of course, is around a commercial mandate that we must fulfill for us to continue to have a reason to exist. The second one is around our contribution towards the social, developmental, and environmental mandates. We understand this very well. We have engaged with various customers and stakeholders, and in our interactions, it's very clear that for us to be able to deliver across these two mandates, we need to attend to some particular themes. The first one is around reputable and ethical business practices. Of course, our suppliers, our customers want reliable energy all the time, and for us to also enable a changing landscape from a South African electricity transformation perspective. People say, you know, you're going to behave like a monopoly forever. You can't change. We understand this. The leadership of Eskom that is there now understands that for a country to be comfortable in terms of electricity supply, we need to embrace the diversity of technologies and move ourselves into a space that has got multiple players. We still are comfortable that we have a role to play. We can pivot. We may not be as large as we used to be, but there's a niche market that we will continue to play in as far as base load is concerned. And also harnessing the capability that is embedded in our people, our know-how. We've been in this business for 100 years, so there's quite a lot of intellectual power in our organization. And I know that the poor performance of the last 3 years have made people to think that, you know, people at Eskom don't know what they're doing. That institution remains the epicenter of engineering excellence in the country. I know that because when I joined Eskom the first time, coming from the oil and gas industry, I thought I'd seen it all until I arrived there. When I went back now, I found even better engineers than I left. So the entity still has extreme capability. If you look at the technical competencies behind all the renewable businesses in the country, they're all ex-Escomites, all of them. The powerhouse of engineering still remains that institution, and what we need to do is to harness it, and as we provide strategic shifts to reposition some of our people's skills for that. We have social mandates, as I said, big challenges with regards to environmental performance. We have some approvals. We have some, breathing space created for us by the Ministry of Environmental Affairs, but we need to come to the party and ensure that we actually move our fleet towards minimum emission standards in line with the authorizations that we have. And the period between now and 2030 will see us do some more investments in that space so that we can be compliant as we move towards our contracted dates. We also remain focused on socio-economic transformation. One of our subsidiaries has 300 billion rand pipeline of transmission lines to build. This will enable the transition of the industry in terms of more renewables, but it is also what you need to kickstart manufacturing and skills development in the country. So you have to be deliberate, you have to be intentional in terms of how you set it up. As a business, internally, our leadership is, of course, focused on driving operational performance, operational excellence in that space, and the results are beginning to show with the culture that we are cultivating in there. We have to improve on governance. This is a very big focal point of the executives and the board. And lastly, be very open and loud around reduction of fraud, corruption and criminality. And those of you who follow us very closely, we're tending to report a lot more on what is being done in that space, what outcomes are we seeing, and I can assure you that you are going to see a lot more of those aspects coming through as we deepen consequence management. So we have made progress, as I've indicated, but it's not enough. We have more that we really need to bring to the fore. One key change that we introduced this year as we adapted the strategy, but it was quite material, is decoupling the interventions that the business had in mind for implementing a just energy transition. We decouple those from the closure of stations. So we're saying we're not waiting for coal stations to shut down before we can start the transition. Technologies can exist alongside each other, and so the options of repowering and repurposing needs to be implemented now. The case study of Komati is one that we seek to avoid repeating, where we literally shut down a power station and in the process shut down the economic activity of a small town in Mpumalanga. That way we have created and increased poverty lines, and we have also destabilized the social fabric of the town. What should we have done? We ought to have contemplated this upfront, implemented the interventions, and then transition. That's what we ought to have done. We're now playing catch up. The number of projects have been implemented in the area for repurposing. We have to now get on with the big repowering interventions. This will be funded through some of the funds from the World Bank, and I'm happy that we are now at a point after a number of battles where we'll go out to the market possibly tomorrow to place procurement packages for 150 megawatts of PV, 100 megawatts of battery energy storage, so that Komati can get back to their life and activity similar to where it was before. As we do these corrective actions, we are now proactively looking at the next stations that are earmarked for shutdown by 2030 or from 2030. We want to be intentional and start doing these intervention projects before then. So in due course, we will announce what we're doing from an agricultural and smart agricultural perspective at Grootvlei. And we're busy working internally to finalize our pipeline of close to 2.4 gigawatts of renewable projects that will have around our stations whilst they're still running from coal fuel. We've already gone to the market for 75 megawatts of PV at Letabo in the Val. The rest will come through, and by end of the year we should be able to announce some aspects of this. That's our strategy in its simplest form, pursuing financial and operational sustainability. I've spoken about facilitating a competitive industry. You may have picked up that we have now operationalized the independent system operator, NTCSA, that used to be a transmission business. It's got an independent board. It's still 100% subsidiary of Eskom. The end game is that it will stand alone as an SOC once a number of financial interrelationships are resolved. We are now focusing on doing the same with our distribution business. Our distribution business is quite an interesting one. It is customer facing. It's mostly the entities that you deal with as a customer. In that space, we're going to really leapfrog our service offering by looking at how we make smarter grids, how we enable bi-directional flow of electricity. For those of you whose PV installations are rendered useless for now, don't throw them away. We're going to get to a point where we'll be looking at you being not only consumers but prosumers for us. We've got a number of projects and product offering lines that we're going to launch in that space just yesterday, and you'll see the media article tomorrow. We launched a big pilot at Eskom Academy of Learning for our e-mobility solutions for electric vehicles, charging stations and vehicles. We are running a pilot of those. Our fleet is quite substantive. We'll drive the demand in the initial stages on the back of our own fleet, and that way demonstrate the ease of transition. And this is a product offering that will dominate, and we seek to dominate as we go into this unbundled space. From a transmission point of view, the NTCSA has to accelerate the transmission development plan, the TDP, so that we can have adequate grid capacity, and that way allow the tapping into more renewable capabilities, especially in the Cape, both the Western and Northern Cape areas. And we remain committed to our 2030 emissions reduction. We have delayed the closure of some of the stations that were meant to be shut between now and 2027. We have argued that that is the most prudent way to do so, given the energy security challenges that we have. But we have not abandoned our undertakings in terms of reducing our emissions. We have a plan on how to meet the target by not shutting stations in their totality, but having multiple units of stations contribute to the overall gross targets that we have on an ongoing basis. Whilst we do that, whilst we delay and secure energy for the country, we'll also have an opportunity to fine-tune our repurposing and repowering plans, so we don't find ourselves repeating Emidubi. Sorry, a Komati example, as I've said earlier on. We have clear projects in terms of a clean energy pipeline. We have some hydro projects that we are now gone past EIA space, but more importantly is about getting our portfolio of over 2 gigawatts of renewables up and going. And this is a space that will work very closely with our shareholder ministry. It's totally aligned in terms of the need to have Eskom's generation fleet revolve into this new space. So Eskom is not a dying business. The concept that Eskom is going to die because the coal business is going to be shut down and thereafter only the national transmission company will remain is actually not correct. Eskom can reinvent itself. You reinvent yourself by beginning to embrace these other technologies and looking at new products, because we have the human capital to really to capitalize on. So over the next 3 years, we have very clear milestones of where we're going. I think of more importance is the second period that's going to be focusing on attaining a very stable generation performance, where we will have also operationalized our distribution business as an unbundled entity and introducing multiple products away from just selling electricity, and also getting ourselves to a space where we can start implementing the initiatives under the just energy transmission. We think that this money that's been spoken about so much needs to actually come and help us, help the communities within which we operate and the country as a whole transition. For us, the key components of the just energy transition has to do with enabling better life for people, creating jobs and reindustrializing. We cannot be in a space where our commitment to the environment is decoupled from our commitment to maintaining the social standards. When we came out of this, saying this earlier this year, it was still a very sensitive topic for others. People wanted to check out that this new CEO is departing from the script that was written by the CEO before him. I have had to reflect on where we are as a country and what is important and how we can get more buy-in, as a matter of fact, when you move with others. Unfortunately, the board itself was in that space. I'm quite pleased that Simon at Sasol, with whom I've had a few coffee sessions, is now beginning to speak the same language. We have to be responsible. We have to remain committed to transition. We have to make it at the pace and scale that is appropriate for the country. We have to take into consideration the realities of unemployment and economic disparities that surround us. Otherwise, we'll have no country. So when we do all of these things, we appreciate that we are really balancing multiple constraints. It's energy security, it's energy affordability, it's energy sustainability. And we operate in a space where continuously we are assessing the least destructive of the options as we go through that phase. So that's the approach that we are taking as Eskom. And beyond Monday, once we talk about the summer system updates, and hopefully we'll talk about the system updates again in March next year, my focus and the focus of the board is to really deepen actions towards the implementation of our strategy and beginning to reshape the next Eskom. We don't talk a lot, we leave you with the data so that you can make your own mind. What we know is that the morale of our staff is higher. Our staff are telling us, we can see it. I've engaged with 15,000 of them. I've gone to power stations, distribution centers across the country, because it's when we get our people in the right mindset that the magic that you are seeing is happening. What we also know is that the country's mood is up. That's why I'm surprised that it was not on your slide. There are two things that are driving the country's mood. It's the GNU and it's also the performance of Eskom. And we know that already, the Bank of America came out early to say if this performance is sustained, we think the economic growth can even get up to 2%. Now, that's a sentiment. The Bureau of Economic Research this week is beginning to also articulate similar kind of things. We understand the role that we play in the country in terms of the quality of life for many of you, but we also understand the contribution we make towards the perception of this country as an investment destination and so on. So thank you very much. I'll take questions later.